If you followed the NFL playoffs, I think it's glaringly obvious. You need a dominant secondary to win at the highest level. Today, I want to give you my top 10 corners, top 10 safeties in this year's NFL draft class as we are a couple weeks away. Now, kicking off the cornerback list, I'm going to keep the trend going where I will show you guys my short list and the players that are just off of my top 50 big board, and I will highlight the players that are inside that top 50. As the short list is on your screen, we have guys that bring different skill sets, different elements to a defensive coordinator scheme. So depending on what a team may need, these players can get drafted higher than others. 6 through 10. We will go through as we have David Igbinosun. They're out of Ohio State. I know I mispronounced it. I've been struggling with his name. Chris Johnson at number 9. No, it is not the running back, and no, there is no relation, but he is an athletic freak. And if you want to draft for upside, he could be a lot higher on your list. D'Angelo Ponds, it's not all about the intangibles. Sometimes you just have to look at the production on that 16-0 Indiana Hoosiers defense. I'll tell you this, they don't win the national championship without D'Angelo Ponds. So I'm excited to see where he gets drafted, how much teams value the intangible side of things, because he just comes in at like 5'9 or 5'10. So a bit shorter for a cornerback that could be drafted fairly high. And I guess that is what makes his draft stock interesting. At Colton Hood is at number 7. Outside of playing for the nasty Tennessee Volunteers, as a Gators fan, I kind of hate to say it, but Colton Hood's very good. Man, last year, he was thrusted into the cornerback 1 role in the SEC, and he had a very good season, man. I wouldn't be shocked if he is a first-round pick when it's all said and done. And at number 6 is Brandon Cisse, just cracking the top 50 big board for myself. Now, this is a player just like Chris Johnson, where if you want to draft a player strictly based on upside, this is your guy at the cornerback position. 6'1", 95. I think he has great size to him, great arm length where he can thrive in man coverage. But if he gets beat, he can use his athleticism to recover. I do think him being as athletic as he is, he can refine his game in zone, which I think zone is a lot more teachable than man. So we'll have to see where he gets drafted and if he has the ability and the time to develop that part of his game. I do think he is a sneaky day 1 pick. So again, his athleticism, what we see on tape in spurts, is kind of the reason I'm buying into the prospect of Brandon Cisse. He is at number 6. Now, number 5, might catch some heat for this one, as I did in the earlier preseason player ranking videos. Chandler Rivers at 5'10", 185. He's a potential my guy. I'll release that list down the line. But I do believe, despite being a bit undersized, he's a true island corner. He wins in man, wins in zone. He's very technically sound. And if he gets beat, he's an elite athlete to recover. But he also has incredible ball skills and IQ. Again, outside of the, I guess, intangible concerns, I like Chandler Rivers. I'm a lot higher on him than consensus. And I do think he'll be a great day 2 selection. And number 4 was my former cornerback 1/cornerback 2, Malik Muhammad. 6', 190. Your ideal size for the cornerback 1 position, but he's so smart, so technically sound coming out of that Texas defense in SEC action where he's playing great team after great team there all of last season. I think the expectations were put on him in that secondary, and I think he showed out. He's elite in zone, great ball skills, clear bright spot on that Texas defense, and really team in general, as they didn't have the season that they aspired to. I think he has a very safe floor, but I honestly moved him down a couple spots because he's not the highest upside of pick. I do think he's going to come in day number 1 and be able to produce, but if you want a player that can also produce but have a way higher ceiling, I think that's why we move it to the top 3 with Avion Terrell out of the Clemson Tigers. Let's get the obvious out of the way. It was a down year for Clemson, right? But I think one of those clear bright spots was Avion Terrell. Had his best year as a college corner. He's a high-level number 1 corner. Of course, he has lineage in the NFL as his brother. It plays for the Atlanta Falcons, same position. Of course, he's been going at it for some time. But Terrell is an elite athlete. He has the NFL bloodline. He might be the smartest corner in the class as far as recognizing route concepts and player tendencies. Terrell comes in probably as the most technically sound corner in the class. So, as far as having a safe floor, but also a very high ceiling as a potential lockdown number one at the next level, Avion should probably be the number one on most people boards. However, he's at number three because at number two, I have Jermod McCoy. At 6', 195. Yes, he is coming off of a year where he didn't play football. Yes, he is coming off of a pretty serious lower leg injury. However, his testing tells us he's back, man. He's a freak athlete with NFL size and physicality. Might be the best athlete in this year's class. Elite man coverage, very high ceiling. However, he does have a low floor due to the injury concerns of last season. We all know that the cornerback position, it takes a year or so to really find your stride at this position, especially if you're not an NFL-ready cornerback from day number one, like let's say a Chandler Rivers or a Malik Muhammad or an Avion Terrell. I think there's more concerns about Jermod McCoy to produce from day number one, but as far as his potential, it's definitely there, and he's at number two on my big board, not big board, cornerback board. Let me clarify, but he is in my top 25 because his athleticism, his production from 2 years ago tells me he can be an elite defensive piece at the next level. And then at number one, we have Mansour Delane. He's polished. He is a true boundary corner. As far as a player that has the least amount of questions, it's either Mansour Delane or Avion Terrell. For Mansour Delane, I think he is such a great athlete, elite across the board in all coverage departments. I do think he has the potential to be a top 10 pick. I honestly think that the closer we get, the more of a consensus it will be that the Kansas City Chiefs will draft this guy with the 9th overall selection. They need a cornerback. They want to compete at a high level. Mansour Delane can step in, produce, but also help this team stay on top of the conference or at least get back to that point. So Mansour Delane is the only cornerback that I could see going in the top 10 of this class. And again, I could see him going number 9 to the Kansas City Chiefs. So here is the top 5. Of course, we ran through these names in depth. 6 through 10 is on your screen. Let's move over to the safeties. Now, safety is looked at to be not the most important position. Some would say it's very replaceable, but I think there's some heavy hitters in this year's class where you can justify taking them with a top 10 selection. And I'm not joking. I promise you guys, I don't normally value safeties, but some of these guys just have that it factor, that game-changing element that a defensive coordinator will love. The short list, we have guys like Bishop Fitzgerald, as well as his running mate in Kamari Ramsey, 2 Trojan men. We have AJ Housey, excuse me. We also have Michael Taft, they're out of Texas. Genesis Smith, they're out of Arizona. A lot of guys that were on the short list, but ultimately none made the top 50. These are the top 5 safeties in this year's class, according to myself, but these are all guys that have made the top 50 big board for myself. I believe at 49 or 50, I had Zakee Wheatley at 6'2", 200. Great instincts, great athlete. He has so much range to his game. He is exactly who a lot of people will say Emmanuel McNeil Warren is, right? Zakee Wheatley is such a physical tackler, incredible range, outside of maybe just wrapping up a bit more, because sometimes he gets lazy in that regard. I think his athleticism, his overall body of work should translate instantly from day number 1. So he is at number 4 for myself, and I believe we skipped over number 5, so we'll cover that later on. At number 3 is a bit of a hot take, but Bud Clark, I'm not shying away from it. I believe at the safety position, if you are not drafting a player that could go in the top 10 of the draft, you should go for experience. You should go for a guy that you know you can trust. Guys that have very safe floors, right? There's a reason why I was very high on a guy like Cameron Kinchens a few years ago, and that's why Cameron Kinchens, with his experience at the college football level, with his ability to create turnovers, has produced for the LA Rams in recent years. For Bud Clark, 6-year college football player, goes without saying, he's seen every single offense, every single route concept over and over, which has led him to having great instincts on tape. I think he's a secure tackler. He is a locker room leader from everything that we hear. Aside of him not having the highest of upsides, I have him at number 3. I trust what I've seen on tape. I trust his experience to translate to the next level. And again, outside of these top 2 guys, there is just, this balance of, do you want to draft for upside or do you want to draft for safety? No pun intended. And I think if you're drafting a safety in the middle rounds, you go for someone that you know can produce. Bud Clark, for me, that's why he's at number 3. At number 2, now we're talking about guys that are not only special, but they could be drafted in the top 10 of this year's draft. And I have them at top 10 on my entire big board. Both of these safeties, top 10 on my big board. The 2 best safeties I've ever evaluated in the 5 years of doing this. Dillon Thieneman at 6'2", 205. His production is absolutely insane. He had double-digit turnovers forced in recent years. Over 100 tackles a season, I believe, as a 3-year starter there at Oregon. So many big-time games he's been in. He has great instincts. He understands route concepts and how to jump on them and how to play with the quarterback's eyes. He's good at grading coverage. Tons of versatility. Outside of potentially being a bit patient, because sometimes he can jump the gun, which, be honest, a lot of safeties do that. This guy is a bona fide top 10 pick in this year's class. Now, will he be drafted as such? I doubt it, because the safety position is not looked at to be as valuable as others. But if he gets drafted in the top 10, it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me if a team traded up for Dillon Thieneman. I think the obvious landing spot for him is the Minnesota Vikings, to be that next Harrison Smith in the middle of the first round, to be the captain on the back end of that Brian Flores defense. It makes too much sense. So that leads me to believe he will not be going to the Minnesota Vikings. I can see him going a lot earlier than that. But Dillon Thieneman, I've come around to him. Man, I don't know what I didn't see the first time I watched his tape, but that second time I turned it on, it was a completely different player in a good way. Dillon Thieneman, top 2 safety in this year's class and top 10 player on my entire big board. And number 1, Caleb Downs might be the best player in this year's class. He is tied for number 1 on my entire board. 6'2", 205. The only reason he's not number 1 is because of those combine medical concerns that I want to see what more comes out about them before the NFL draft. I believe he's elite at everything. One of the smartest players, if not the smartest player I've ever evaluated. 3 years of pure dominance on one of the best defenses in college football, where the spotlight is on him to make plays, and he does that, man, more than pretty much any other player in the country. The only downside to Caleb Downs is that if you like him, don't draft him. You have to love him, right? You have to love him, given the fact that he's going to be a potential top 5 pick in this year's class. You have to be 100% certain that the medicals won't be a concern. You have to be 100% certain that this guy can transform a defense like an Antoine Winfield at the safety position, or Derwin James. I think he can. I think most of us would agree with that sentiment. And again, he is tied for number 1 on my entire big board with Jeremiah Love. But just to recap here, we went through the top 4. You guys saw him. At number 5, we didn't talk about him, but incredible range out of Toledo. Shout out to him. But it is Emmanuel McNeill-Warren. I think that's the community's favorite safety this year. Again, he flies around the field there for the Rockets, made a bunch of plays, and some people have him going in the first round of the draft. I'm not there yet, but I do think the potential is there for him to produce from day number 1 as a middle round safety. But that is my top 5. Followed by my 6 through 8, as well as the short list I mentioned early on. Excuse me. But, ladies and gentlemen, we are now through the front 7. We are now through the secondary. The only thing we have to cover is the linebackers and the offensive line. So, that will be coming out to you shortly. So, be on the lookout for that. But before we get out of here, please consider dropping a like, subscribing to the channel. This is a relatively new channel. So, hey, if you enjoyed, help us get to 150 subscribers before the NFL draft. I don't sell you anything. I don't run any ads. We just strictly talk the NFL draft on this channel, man. So if you enjoyed, consider supporting. But hey, I'll see you guys for the linebackers.